Who will replace Tashard Choice as the Texas running backs coach? I've got four candidates we'll talk about on today's video. Some are names you may know, some are names you may not. Who would be the best hire? We'll discuss on today's edition of the BK Show. What's up, guys and gals? Welcome in to another edition of the BK Show. This is your one-stop shop for Texas Longhorns content on YouTube with your host, BK Brad Kellner. I'll start by saying that Stan Drayton is no longer a candidate. I'm sure all of you know this by now, but the guy who was the running backs coach at Texas before Tashard Choice just took a job to become the running backs coach at Penn State. Some fans were hopeful for a reunion with the guy who brought Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Brooks, and Jaden Blue to Austin, but it's not happening. I think I would have been in favor of a reunion as well. But again, it's a waste of breath at this point as Stan Drayton is headed to State College, PA. So who's left? We've got two big names, one wild card, and one internal candidate that we're going to talk about. And we'll start with a name that most of you know, Rashad Samples, who is the current running backs coach at Oregon. He's also an assistant head coach there as well. Remember that. Samples would be a home run hire, guys. I mean, a grand slam hire. Shout out Denny's. I'll take your money if you're wanting to give it out. He's only 30 years old, but his resume is ridiculous. Of course, he was at Texas under Tom Herman in 2018. He was the youngest position coach in the NFL in 2022 when he was the running backs coach with the LA Rams. He helped turn Kyron Williams into a Pro Bowler. He's been at Houston. He's been at SMU, Arizona State, Texas, and Oregon. And of course, that stint in the NFL as well. He's done all of that. And again, he's only 30 years old. So he's got some skins on the wall that most guys don't get by the time they're 40 or 50. He's an elite recruiter. He's from Dallas. His pops is the legendary Duncanville High School football coach, Reginald Samples. Rashad also played his college football at Houston. So he's got ties all over the great state of Texas. You think of DeCorian Moore, the five-star receiver, the number one receiver in the country that Oregon was able to land in the class of 2025. Yeah, a lot of that had to do with the fact that Rashad Samples was on staff at Oregon. So this guy has proven to be an elite recruiter. He's done a tremendous job at Oregon in that front. He's also done a great job working with running backs, both in college and in the National Football League. He checks just about every box: experience, recruiting, development, all the above. He's there. He's got everything you want. He'd be my number one choice out of all of the guys who are available right now. But, and there's a big but here, he's going to be hard to land. Oregon has money. We all know that. They can pay whatever Texas pays, and I don't think the Ducks are too keen on letting Rashad Samples walk. And also, he has that assistant head coach title. He can't get that at Texas because Jeff Banks already has that at Texas. And the Longhorns also have two co-offensive coordinators who don't call plays already with Kyle Flood and AJ Milwee. So you can't give him that title either. So he'd be great. Again, he checks a lot of boxes. The one downside with Rashad Samples is he'd probably only be here for a year or two because he has been job hunting seemingly every other season. He's gone from place to place a lot, but I'm willing to deal with that challenge to have one or two great years with Rashad Samples on staff. But again, guys, it's going to be tough to lure him from Oregon. Oregon has the money. He's got a better title at Oregon than he probably could get here at Texas. So it might be an uphill battle for Texas to land Rashad Samples. So who else is out there? Well, another name to keep an eye on, Carlos Locklyn. He is the running backs coach at Ohio State. Hey, Oregon, Ohio State, two of the best programs in college football. Poaching a coach from either of them, never a bad idea. And the Longhorns already stole a coach from the Buckeyes earlier this offseason with Alan Clark. Why not make it two? Locklyn has been, first of all, Ohio State's run game this past year. Should start with that. Incredible. Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, two of the best in the country, maybe the best 1-2 punch at running back in the country, helped lead Ohio State to a national championship. Yeah, the running back play was pretty good in Columbus, Ohio this past season. Locklyn's got some experience as well. He's been a running back coach in college football for 14 years, was at Western Kentucky. Speaking of Oregon, he was at Oregon before he took the gig at Ohio State. And he's got recruiting experience as well. He was the director of high school relations at Memphis and Florida State. Before that, I believe he followed Mike Norvell. I know people have used Mike Norvell and fired in the same breath a lot over the last year or so, but he followed Mike Norvell from Memphis to Florida State, was the director of high school recruiting relations on a couple of staffs. So he's got running back coach experience. He's got a lot of recruiting staff experience as well. That checks those two boxes. And another pro with Carlos Locklyn, besides the fact that you'd be stealing from Ohio State, this guy is from Alabama. He's got ties to the South. And that's what Tashard Choice had. All right. Texas was able to recruit a lot of elite running backs, not only in state, but from other areas of the South as well. Tashard Choice from Atlanta recruited Georgia really well, recruited Florida really well. You're losing those connections with Choice taking the job with the Detroit Lions. You wouldn't have to lose all of them with Carlos Locklyn. Again, from Birmingham, Alabama. He's got ties to the South. And Ohio State recruits Texas every year, and Ohio State recruits the same players that Texas does every single season. So every 2026 and 2027 running back that Tashard Choice had talked to before going to the NFL, there's a very good chance that Carlos Locklyn has already spoken to them as well. So you wouldn't have to be starting from ground zero in terms of building relationships with coach and recruit. That's a key stat. That could help make the transition pretty seamless for Texas. So Carlos Locklyn, again, running back coach experience, recruiting staff experience, ties to the South. There's a lot to like about that name that's being thrown around. So those are the two big names I mentioned. Now we go to the wild card here. This guy's kind of a big name when you look at his resume, when you look at what he's done, but he's not a name that, Texas fans are talking a whole lot about right now. And I don't know how many insider sites are even talking about this guy, but I was told that he's at least in the mix for this opening. So we'll see what that means. McDonald. He is the current running backs coach for the Los Angeles Chargers. Interesting candidate. Was with the Chargers last season. He's still on staff with the Chargers. Before that, though, he was at USC as their running backs coach from 2022 to 2023. And before that, he was at Utah for 6 seasons as their running backs coach. He's not from Texas. He's from the Bay Area and did some growing up in Colorado as well. But he did recruit and land a lot of Texas running backs during his tenures at both USC and Utah. Go back to the class of 2023. That was McDonald's first real full cycle as the running back coach at SC. He signed Quentin Joyner and Amarian Peterson, who are two of the top 4 running backs in Texas in that class. By the way, Joyner just transferred to Texas Tech. He was the number 1 running back in the portal this offseason. So 2 of the top 4 guys in Texas, McDonald was able to get them to go out of state to USC. And then you go back to his time at Utah. Jaquindon Jackson, all right, Keaontay McDonald was able to get him out of the portal, of course, from Texas. Ty Jordan, rest in peace. Another Texas kid who ended up at Utah in large part because Keaontay McDonald was there. So even though, again, not from Texas, never really coached in Texas, he has something cooking in Texas with what he did in college at SC and Utah. And I was trying to figure out where's the link here, right? Why would Steve Sarkisian be interested in Keaontay McDonald, even though he's never coached in Texas? You got to go pretty far back to find a tie with McDonald and anybody on the Texas staff. But McDonald, as a player in 2008, was at Idaho when Johnny Nansen was coaching there. He was the special teams coordinator, also the defensive line and linebacker coach there too. Pretty absurd that he had all 3 of those roles, but he was doing a little bit of everything, I guess, at the Kibbe Dome for the Vandals. But again, McDonald played at Idaho while Nansen was a coach there at Idaho. So who knows if they've maintained their relationship over the years. Again, that was all the way back in 2008, so a lot has changed. But there is one sort of tie-in with McDonald and a current member of Steve Sarkisian's staff. So the pros for McDonald, NFL experience, that always helps. He's got college experience. Again, Utah's running backs were pretty good. And you've got a lot of Texas guys who went there as well. He's proven to be a good developer, but not the flashiest hire. And again, doesn't have a ton of ties to Texas. It may take him some time to build those back up. And now the last candidate that we'll talk about today, the internal hire That's Chris Gilbert, currently the special assistant to the head coach. Yes, Dwight Schrute. That is a real title. Not the flashiest name out there, but again, when you think about Tashard Choice and what he brought to the Longhorns, he was a top tier recruiter. That's what Chris Gilbert is. He was big on the Justice Terry commitment a few weeks ago, and he's been really helpful in recruiting at Texas. He spent a couple of different stints on Steve Sarkisian's staff in Austin. He was here in 2021 and 2022, left for a season to go to UNT to be a tight ends coach, but he came back to Austin this past year. And think about how well the Longhorns have recruited in the Steve Sarkisian era. 2 top 5 classes in 2021 and 2022. Chris Gilbert at that time was the director of high school relations, so he was a big part of that. And then, yeah, this guy's been able to recruit and land just about anybody he's wanted without an on field role. Like, he hasn't been able to travel and do in home visits with these recruits. If you make him the running backs coach and give him that position title, then his recruiting gets even better. And again, he's already on staff, so he already has a lot of connections with players across the state. He was a high school coach in the Metroplex for a number of years, so he's got a ton of connections in one of the most talent-rich areas in the country. He can really recruit the great state of Texas. And you look at the class of 2026, 2 of the top 5 running backs in America are in-state kids with Javion Osborne and KJ Edwards. You want to keep your best talent in the state of Texas. I think promoting Chris Gilbert can go a long way into making sure that happens. And he's earned consideration for this job. This is not just oh, here you go. You're the easy hire. We wouldn't have to pay you as much. And we know you'll say, yeah. No, Chris Gilbert has earned this hire with what he's done, both as an on-field coach, but also as a recruiter as well. And you talk about the current running backs who are at Texas. Look, we haven't heard anybody like thinking about hitting the portal, but you talk about making CJ Baxter happy, Jarrett Gibson, Trey Wisner, the guys you already have at running back. They all know Chris Gilbert. I think they all like Chris Gilbert. So you at least know that you're keeping the current guys in your room happy by hiring somebody that they like. So there's a lot to like about Chris Gilbert. Even though internal hires aren't always the flashiest, this guy, again, has earned the opportunity to be considered for this role. And I'd be pretty happy if that is the decision that Steve Sarkisian ends up making. So, of those 4 guys that we talked about, I think Rashad Samples would be my number 1 pick. Chris Gilbert would be my number 2. I'd go Carlos Locklyn with number 3, and then Keaontay McDonald probably number 4. But again, a lot of pros with all 4 of those guys, and I trust in Steve Sarkisian to get this hire right. By the way, with Sark, you never really know. Like, most of the names, 3 of the names we talked about are college coaches. Most of the names that most people are talking about are college coaches. With Sark, it could be an NFL guy that nobody is talking about and an NFL guy that nobody's really ever heard of. Look at Kenny Baker, that hire last year, NFL guy from out of nowhere. Chris Jackson, a few years ago, wide receivers coach, NFL guy from out of nowhere. So it could be somebody we're not talking about right now, somebody who's coaching on Sundays in some role. You never know. But again, Sark has earned my trust. I think he's earned the trust of most Longhorn fans as well. What say you? Comment below. Out of those 4 names, who do you want? Is there a name that I didn't talk about that you want me to talk about in a future video? Who should be the next running backs coach for Longhorn football? Hey, if you made it this far, number 1, thank you. Number 2, a quick request to like this video. And number 3, another request to subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate y'all's continued love and support. We'll talk about some more candidates in future videos. And obviously, when something drops, we'll have the breaking news for you right here on the BK Show, your one-stop shop for Texas Longhorns content on YouTube. Thank y'all for watching. Remember, when you watch the BK Show, you rule. See y'all tomorrow.